This is Lime Street in Liverpool as viewed from St George's Hall. The white building that we're going to take a look at here is the Liverpool Empire, and as a large theatre with a decent capacity, it played host to quite a few rock bands and pop groups over the years. But the building we're going to look at in this video was a rival to it during the 1970s. London Road, and the building with the turrets is T.J. Hughes. This road here will lead towards St Andrew's Gardens, which featured in a video not so long ago. Lovely cobblestones on this street. This video we're going to take a look at Liverpool Stadium, and probably better known to me as the Stadium, but it was also known as Liverpool Boxing Stadium because predominantly that's what it was built for. So you might ask, what are we doing behind London Road then, Jeff? Well, doing a bit of research on the Boxing Stadium itself, it turns out that it started on London Road. So let's have a look at what used to be Liverpool Boxing Stadium. We're walking behind London Road because it's a little bit busy and noisy on London Road, and it's a little bit quieter here. This is back Bixteth Street. Nice. London Road has changed considerably over the years. My first job was on London Road in a shop called John Collier's, which was on a block next to T.J. Hughes, which we saw earlier. And this is a little bit of street art dedicated to women's football. Now on the opposite side of the road here is Pudsey Street, and on the left hand side this new tower block used to be the Odeon Cinema. I think the white building on the right was Jackson's Tailors. No prizes for guessing that this is now student accommodation. And this is what the Odeon Cinema used to look like back in its heyday. This photograph was taken in 1913. It was taken from the Wellington Monument on William Brown Street, and it shows Lime Street turning into London Road. You can just about see the edge of the Empire Theatre in the top right hand corner. Just behind the Empire on Pudsey Street, which is the first turning off London Road, you can see a building with a curved roof, and that is the original Boxing Stadium. In this aerial photograph we can see the Wellington Monument in the bottom right hand corner, and that's looking over Lime Street. You can see the Empire Theatre and the trams turning the corner into London Road. And the building with the curved roof is the original Liverpool Boxing Stadium. Now, just to help you get your bearings, here's an old map showing where the original Boxing Stadium was, and this is what it looked like inside. This souvenir brochure commemorates the last day of boxing at this particular venue. It shows that it was opened in 1911 and closed in 1931. Just as a matter of interest, the Odeon opened on the 15th of October 1934, and it was an art Deco style building back then. It closed on the 30th of September 2008, and by then it looked like this. Let's have a walk down Pudsey Street. This would have been the Boxing Stadium here on the left hand side, and we're heading down to Mar Edgerton's pub. We're at the back of Liverpool Empire, and this is the stage door. Used to come down here to try and get a sneak preview of the bands. When I came, I used to go to the Legs of Man for a drink. I've never been in Mar Edgerton's. Looks a little bit more consumer friendly these days than back then. So this would have been the Boxing Stadium here on the right hand side, and maybe that's the original bricks. The Empire Theatre behind me was a great place for gigs, probably still is. I've not been for a long time. But back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, there were some great bands who played here at the Liverpool Empire. I'll probably include that in a different video. I think this one is going to be long enough. Now the video about the Moonstone started really here in William Brown Street. I've come back here today. I'm going to take a walk in this direction towards Dale Street. Once we walk down Dale Street, I'm going to take a right turn at Moorfields and head towards the stadium, which, like many things that I see to video, the stadium no longer exists, long gone. Now it's really sunny today and it's gone really warm. I've got a raincoat on because when I came out it looked really dull grey, and it rained a couple of times. But it's a good place to store things because I'm travelling light today. I haven't got a great deal of kit with me. No backpack, as you can see. Now the only problem is when it's really sunny like this, I can't see the screen. Every now and again I pop into view, so I know I'm actually somewhere in the middle of this. But, walking down now towards the entrance of the first Mersey Tunnel. And that's the tunnel entrance there in front of us. We're going to take a wander around the side of the tunnel and head off down Dale Street. That's where we've come from. That's William Brown Street over there. And there's cars and vans going into the entrance of the tunnel. Now, for those of you who know this place and maybe moved away and haven't been back or haven't been back for a while, you'll know that there used to be a flyover here, and it's now been pulled down and the whole area looks a lot better for it. The flyover actually went nowhere because they never built the rest of the ring road that it was intended to serve. Right, so this is the end of Dale Street here. Ship and Mitre pub there. and pulling this flyover down exposed the building on the end, which is a lovely Art Deco building. We need to go in the opposite direction, so we're going to head off up Dale Street here. This is the Magistrates Court, or the former Magistrates Court, on the right hand side here on the corner. After the original Liverpool Boxing Stadium closed in Pudsey Street in 1931, a new boxing stadium was built on St Paul's Square, Bixteth Street. The arena was designed by architect Ken Muir Kinner. Now, I couldn't find a great deal about this person. There isn't a great deal to be said, apart from he served in the First World War as a photographer, and later, after the war, after the First World War, he studied to be an architect. Now, this building was the first in the UK to be designed specifically as a boxing stadium. The ring was set up in the middle of the auditorium, so no matter where you sat, you had a view of the action in the ring. Now, most boxing rings have buckets in the corner full of water for the boxes in the intervals, but at this venue they actually plumbed in sinks rather than the buckets, and these sinks could be removed quite easily if the venue was used for another use. So the new boxing stadium on Bixteth Street opened on the 20th of October 1932, and it was opened by Liverpool's Lord Mayor. Now, I did read that not only was it the first purpose-built boxing stadium in the UK, it was also the first purpose-built boxing stadium in the world. The premises in Pudsey Street weren't actually designed as a boxing stadium. Originally, that premises was used as Liverpool United Tramways Omnibus Company's horse stables. So over the years, the boxing stadium did actually play host to other events other than boxing. It was used for trade union meetings, and it even hosted the 1951 Conservative Party conference. I believe the first venture into hosting musical events began in 1956. Louis Armstrong, the legendary jazz musician, played at the Liverpool Stadium in 1956. In 1960, Gene Vincent paid a visit to the stadium, and he was supported by Jerry and the Pacemakers, Howie Casey and the Seniors, Rory Storm, and also the Beatles apparently. However, there wouldn't be any more musical events until 1970. Now, I read that there were 6 people who were involved in the boxing stadium venture, and they were headed by a guy called Johnny Best and Best Enterprises. So Johnny Best was a former middleweight boxing champion in the British Army, and he came from a family of boxing promoters who lived in West Derby. When he died in 1956, his directorship was taken over by his son, who was also called John. His other son, Pete Best, became drummer in the Beatles for a short while, at least before they started recording music. While the stadium was owned and operated by Best Enterprises, the booking of musicians and bands in the 1970s fell to a guy called Roger Eagle. So let's have a look at who Roger Eagle was. Roger Eagle began his musical career as a DJ. From 1963 to 1968, he was a DJ at the Twisted Wheel in Manchester, and during all-nighters when John Mayall and the Bluesbreakers, the Spencer Davis Group and the Animals, the Yardbirds, Screaming Jay Hawkins and many, many more played. He later went on to open a short-lived all-night venue called the Magic Village in Manchester. Here he was promoting gigs by acts such as Jethro Tull, the Liverpool Scene, the Edgar Broughton Band and Joe Cocker. You have to excuse me for a second, the coppers are out. I think someone said something nasty on Twitter again. So it seems soon after this, Roger Eagle, who was actually born in Oxford, started to promote gigs at Liverpool Stadium. So we jump now to the 30th of May 1970, and it looks like the first band to headline the stadium was the Edgar Broughton Band. They were supported by the Third Ear Band and Kevin Ayers and the Whole World. There is a bit of a gap then until the 19th of September 1970 when the next gig took place, and that was headlined apparently by someone called Trees. They were supported by Bronco, Mott the Hoople and Free. I have a feeling that listing is the wrong way round, and Free topped the bill, supported by Mott the Hoople, Bronco and whoever the hell Trees were. Anyway, one way or the other, that was the second gig. We're quickly heading up Bixteth Street now, towards where Liverpool Stadium used to reside, just at the top of the road there. Now, I mocked up a photograph of what this view would have looked like back in the day when the stadium was here. So roughly this was its location. It could have been a little bit further to the right, to be honest, but if it was a bit further to the right in this photograph you wouldn't see it. The building behind it was there. It's now called the Plaza. It wasn't the Plaza back in the day, but it looked exactly the same as that, and you can see it in some of the photographs that people have taken. I'm not sure if the building on the right hand side was the red brick one or the orange brick building. Can't remember. As I said earlier in the video, this is a trip to a place which no longer exists. Roger Eagle and Pete Fulwell founded Eric's in Pudsey Street in early 1977. The last gig at the stadium was played on the 18th of December 1976. Eddie and the Hot Rods were supported by Ultravox. Once Roger Eagle had left, there were no more gigs at the stadium after that. The stadium continued to host boxing matches and wrestling matches. Wrestling was very big back then, a big TV event on a Saturday afternoon. But the final boxing match here took place in 1985, and the stadium was demolished around about 1986 into 1987. So let's have a look at the site once occupied by Liverpool Boxing Stadium. Well, it's this office block here. This glass-fronted building stands on the location where the stadium used to be. So let's have a look at where the old stadium used to sit and what it looked like. The stadium had a capacity for 3,700 people, and as I showed earlier, the boxing ring was in the centre of the auditorium. But when rock bands were on, part of the auditorium was screened off. The back of the boxing ring was screened so that you couldn't go what was basically backstage. So I would imagine part of that capacity was lost when they had rock bands on. The only time this didn't happen was on the 29th of November 1971 when Led Zeppelin played here, and they actually moved the boxing ring out of the way to increase the capacity. So the stage which the bands used to play on was actually the riser for the boxing ring. They basically, I think, used to just take the ropes off and lay it out as a stage for bands to play. When my wife and I were just boyfriend and girlfriend, one of our first dates was here. The 11th of October 1975, we came to the stadium to see Thin Lizzy. They were supported on that night by String Driven Thing. Now, as far as I know, Liverpool Stadium didn't have a bar, so therefore there was no age restriction. And if you were old enough, or maybe looked old enough, you would come here for a drink before or during the gigs. I say during gigs because sometimes on a Saturday the gigs would start in the afternoon, and while the roadies were changing over the equipment for the next band, people would come out and go to the Cross Keys. And now I've made that sound like a really good idea, I think I'll nip into the Cross Keys for a drink. It's been quite a long walk today. Today, the Cross Keys really looks after the people who work around here, the business people and the office workers who work in the glass-fronted buildings which surround it. They offer lunchtime meals. The pub is now on 2 floors, and it also has a beer garden at the rear where you can sit outside on a nice day. This is what the Cross Keys looked like in the 1970s when I was going to gigs. And this is what it looked like way back when, before gigs were even invented. This is a list of the gigs which were held at Liverpool Stadium starting in 1970 and working through to 1976. During these years, it really did rival the Liverpool Empire for attracting bands to play at the venue. But looking through the list of the bands who played here, it's like a history of what happened to music during the 1970s, starting off in the early 70s with the heavy rock bands, heavy blues bands, and some prog rock bands. There are some really big names here, bands who were known on a worldwide stage, not just local bands, although there were one or two. Supercharge played here, Nuts played here, and so did Strife, all homegrown local Liverpool talent. What you will notice as we get out of 1975 and into 1976, rock bands didn't play here anymore. Punk bands and new wave bands started to play here, starting off with Dr. Feelgood. Rock music and progressive rock music was on its way out, and not just here, every venue. It would be around 1980 before rock music actually made a comeback. Now, Liverpool Stadium was built in St Paul's Square, so let's have a look at St Paul's Square. And this is St Paul's Church. The stadium is apparently built on its graveyard, but it looks very nice. It's surrounded by Georgian houses, a little bit like what you would find in Faulkner Street and Huskerson Street. People who lived here used to walk down to the banks of the Mersey, which wasn't far away, and paddle at the river bank. This illustration makes the whole area look very pretty. However, if we look at a photograph, it's slightly different. Personally, I think they're both probably true. It's just decayed over the years and not been very well looked after. Okay, so that's my little look at one of Liverpool's lost music venues, and certainly one of my favourite places ever. Had great fun at Liverpool Stadium. So I think I'll just say thank you very much for watching, and as always, we'll catch up soon. Right, enough of this afternoon drinking in the Cross Keys. I will leave some information about what we've talked about in the description below. But for now, I think I'm going to take a walk back around the corner here. See if I end up back in 1972. Okay, thank you once again. We'll catch up soon.